Thanks to a TikTok comment, I think we may have made a major breakthrough on an unsolved murder from 1886. Now, you may remember me from another car video, in which I discussed how I think Edgar Degas could have been the murderer we know as Jack the Ripper. Since that video, I've been doing a ton of research to either confirm or disprove that theory. I'm up to video 27. Videos 26 and 27 have been covering some Parisian murders that predate the Whitechapel murders we know as Jack the Ripper's work, that A, remain unsolved, B, have a similar MO, and C, have a similar type of victim, courtesans. And those of you who are interested in Jack the Ripper in particular and have dug deep into it and know about the Thames Torso Murders, you guys were very interested to learn that there was a Parisian torso murder as well. In the casebook forums where they discuss the Whitechapel murders and also, of course, the Thames Torso Murders, there has been this wonderful thread full of amazing information that has gone on for literally years of an unsolved murder of a woman. The body was found in 3 different very public places. Luckily for me, he has recently published a paper. In issue 171 of Ripperologist, Fabrice Bourland wrote, "Montrouge, 1886, the starting point of a bloody career." There's a map of the 3 locations where the body was found. This is a very exciting paper. It's thoroughly researched. He uses primary sources, he speaks the language, and he's very detail-oriented. And in this paper, he lays out all of the ways that this murder is not just like the torso murders of London Thames torso murders, but also quite a bit like the Whitechapel murders from Jack the Ripper. Now, the body was never identified in part because the head was missing. But despite a large incision on the belly of this woman's torso, it is thought that her neck incision was her cause of death, according to doctors at the time, which is very similar to the Whitechapel murders. There was also a mutilation of the nether regions, and certain feminine organs were missing, and it appeared that gut organs had been discarded as well. These are things that are very similar to many of the cases, but in particular similar to Mary Kelly's case. What's really interesting about this case, though, is that the body was found in pieces in 3 different packages, bound by twine, and 2 of the packages at least were wrapped in cloth. It did not appear that the 3rd one was wrapped. But the way the body was divided was kind of unusual, actually. Our French researcher, Mr. Bourland, took the time to find primary sources where doctors talked about the incisions. And just like in the Jack the Ripper case, these doctors who presided over the autopsy said that this person clearly had anatomical knowledge, but also was not a surgeon. But what's really interesting about this is how it was torn apart, literally. The packages were disarticulated, the joints were disarticulated, which means that they were like rest apart, which did no damage to the bones. Which of course ties us back to this comment. Thank you so much, Valkyrie, because this just, oh my gosh, it was so smart of you to bring this up. Because, in case you didn't know, there is something called the Parisian Catacombs. In the 18th and even I think at the beginning of the 19th century, Paris was growing rapidly and they had to relocate some of their cemeteries. And so what they did was with their oldest bones, they just stacked them underground in old stone quarries. But even before the Franco-Prussian War, the city had expanded in order to include that area that was the quarries and that was now the catacombs, where they had stacked all of these bones. You've probably seen pictures. They basically look like this. And it's been open to the public on a limited basis for tours since about 1867. Catacombs run across a large swath of Paris, but the majority of the catacombs lie in the 14th arrondissement. Arrondissement is like borough. It denotes a neighborhood. In the Montrouge crime, Montrouge is in the 14th arrondissement. Just to make this more interesting, one of the packages had been thrown onto the railway tracks of the metro at the time, the Petite Ceinture, which was like a circle around the city. Fabrice Bourland was so close to this discovery himself because in his paper he notes, slightly prior to the murder, which must have occurred on August 3rd or 4th, there had been a cave-in on this railway line just after the Montrouge station. Now, in this neighborhood, the train ran 10 to 15 meters below the surface of the street. So knowing that the catacombs were in that vicinity, I decided to figure out whether they were accessible through the tunnel. And guess what? The Little Belt Railway line, according to Atlas Obscura and other sources online, to this day, these abandoned railway tunnels remain the easiest way to illegally access the catacombs. So, by portioning the body, by disarticulating the joints, he could easily have stacked the corpse amongst the bones of the other dead citizens of Paris. And once they decomposed, they would look like any other bones. They wouldn't be destroyed in a manner that made it clear they had been murdered. And Fabrice Bourland's research is so thorough that I was even able to tie it back to my favorite pet theory. He noted at several points during this paper that the limbs had been washed in phenol, that is, carbolic acid. In 1867, carbolic acid started being used as a sanitizer for medicine. But prior to that, it was used to negate the smell of animal cadavers, but is also a common artist's supply even today in order to prevent your gesso from molding. And according to art historians, it was even used as a common ingredient in oil paints at the time. And so the materials that were used to prepare this body were ones that he would likely have had lying around in his studio. And while Degas was living in the second arrondissement at the time, I believe, which was a long distance and all the way across the Seine, it would have been worth going that ways to drop the body if you had been able to hide it so perfectly amongst a million other cadavers. And witnesses at the time did say that they saw it being hauled in a cart. However, given his advanced age, I don't think he would have moved it himself. So I decided to see where Walter Seickert was at that time, since they had already met in 1882 and then again stayed together for a month in 1883, so I figured maybe they were close enough in 1886. But he had just married his wife in 1885, and the two of them were on a trip to Switzerland for the entire summer. I doubt that he would have dropped his wife off in Switzerland and gone over to visit Degas, no matter how much both of them liked Degas. They were newlyweds. So maybe he had another accomplice, or maybe this is not Degas' work at all. Thanks to Fabrice Bourland, to Valkyrie's comment, and to TikTok, we have made a major breakthrough on this 1886 unsolved murder. Congratulations, guys. Thanks for being here and for being along for the ride. Let's keep doing research.